My entire family, especially my older sister, Veronica, always treated my fiancé, Julian, like a charity case. He was a sweet history teacher at a public high school, and I was an art curator. Our life was modest, but happy. Veronica, the socialite married to a high-powered corporate VP, called me pathetic for choosing a man she claimed couldn't afford me. She spent weeks threatening to fix my wedding disaster, and on the day of my sacred vows, she finally made her move. She stormed the altar, waving fabricated financial records, screaming that Julian was a fraud, a liar, and a financial drain. She ruined the perfect moment, calling us both paupers in front of every guest. That was her mistake. She knew Julian the teacher, but she didn't know who he really was. As she stood there, smug and destructive, my gentle fiancé lowered his voice, smiled a cold, dangerous smile, and said, "Ronnie, I think you're confusing me with my job. I'm not just Julian Vance, the history teacher. I'm Julian Vance, the majority owner of the company that employs your husband." Her face went white, her husband went silent, and my wedding, which she tried to ruin, turned into the day I finally executed perfect, beautiful revenge. The shadows cast by the 100-year-old oak trees in the old Grove Arboretum were exactly the shade of calm I needed. My wedding, scheduled for 4 p.m., was taking place in a small, stunning historic garden in New Jersey. The venue was beautiful, intimate, and profoundly not expensive. This fact was the primary source of my sister Veronica's existential agony. I am Serafina Sarah Hayes, 32 years old, and I have always been the quiet half of the Hayes family equation. My career as an art curator at a small but prestigious Boston gallery fulfilled me. My life was built on aesthetic appreciation, intellectual pursuit, and emotional honesty, all things my older sister, Veronica Ronnie Hayes Sterling, considered utterly trivial. Ronnie, 35, married money and status in a spectacle of excess 7 years ago. Her husband, Richard Sterling, was a vice president of advertising for Horizon Publishing, a massive media firm. Ronnie lives in a mansion in Greenwich, drives a leased Bentley, and dedicates her life to elite charity committees. Her entire self-worth is derived from public validation and the size of her husband's corporate title. In her eyes, my life was a tragic failure, and my fiancé, Julian Vance, was the final, pathetic nail in my coffin. Julian was everything Ronnie despised. He was a history teacher at a public high school, brilliant and deeply kind, but drove a modest, 10-year-old sedan and wore clothes that prioritized comfort over labels. We met volunteering at a local historical preservation society, the kind of place Ronnie wouldn't step foot in without a camera crew. Our engagement was quiet, marked by a stunning, antique gold signet ring he gave me, simple, elegant, and decidedly not a 5-carat diamond. Ronnie had made the entire 6 months of wedding planning a brutal campaign of character assassination. She called my choices sad. "Sarah, darling, this arboretum looks like a glorified public park," she had hissed during our only planning meeting. "And that dress? It's vintage? That's code for secondhand, sweetie. Richard and I practically had to sell our Gulfstream shares just to pay for your catering, and you're still choosing budget appetizers. And Julian, does he really think teaching kids about the Magna Carta is a sustainable lifestyle? He is going to be a financial burden, Sarah. You are being pathetic and delusional." She had offered repeatedly to pay for an entirely new wedding, a proper one at the plaza, provided Julian signed a comprehensive prenuptial agreement designed to humiliate him. I refused every time. I knew Julian's quiet dignity was worth more than her entire life savings. What Ronnie, Richard, and my entire family didn't know was the immense, careful secret Julian had been carrying for 5 years. Julian Vance was not just a teacher. He was Julian Vance, the chairman and majority owner of Vance Media Group VMG, the massive international media conglomerate that owned not only countless television networks and digital properties, but also Horizon Publishing, the very company where Richard Sterling was a mid-level vice president. Julian had taken a self-imposed, mandatory sabbatical and sworn secrecy from his family. His grandfather, the founder of VMG, had included a unique clause in the family trust. Julian could only inherit the controlling stake if he spent 5 years living and working anonymously in a public service role, stripped of all corporate titles and luxury, to ensure he married a woman who loved him, not his portfolio. He had chosen teaching history, his true passion. His trial period ended 3 days after our wedding. Julian had been prepared to tell me the full truth on our honeymoon, but when Ronnie's attacks escalated, we realized there was an opportunity for a spectacular, necessary act of justice. We had planned this moment for maximum theatrical impact, a sweet revenge that would protect our marriage and utterly dismantle Ronnie's corrosive arrogance. The ceremony began. The sun filtered goldenly through the oak leaves, casting dappled light on the delicate lace of my restored vintage gown. It wasn't flashy, but it was perfect. Julian, in a simple but impeccably tailored suit, looked breathtakingly handsome. We had exchanged rings, his humble-looking signet ring now permanently etched onto my finger, and were moving into our personal vows. Julian had just begun speaking, his voice thick with sincere emotion, when the chaos erupted. Stop. Stop the wedding. Veronica burst from the third row, her face contorted with righteous fury, her hair a dramatic wave of expensive highlights. She was wearing an ill-fitting, vibrant purple dress that clashed horribly with the natural tones of the garden. A perfect visual representation of her jarring personality. She strode past the gasping guests, including our stunned parents, and stopped directly at the altar, planting herself between Julian and me. This is a fraud. My sister is being scammed, she announced, her voice pitched high enough to carry over the gentle fountain. I know you're trying to hide it, Sarah, but I had to intervene for your own good. This man is a walking financial black hole. Richard, her husband, who was standing stiffly at the edge of the second row, hissed, Ronnie, what the hell are you doing? Sit down. But Ronnie was beyond control. She thrust a crumpled stack of printouts, badly fabricated bank statements and loan rejection letters, into the face of the officiant. Look at this. I dug into his records. He's living paycheck to paycheck. He had 3 credit applications rejected this year. He owes back taxes. He is barely solvent. He's marrying Sarah for stability because he can't manage his pathetic teacher's salary, she shrieked. He's a financial failure, Sarah. Wake up. You're tying yourself to a lifetime of mediocrity because you're too pathetic to aim higher. He is a financial disaster, and you are pathetically settling. Tears of frustration welled in my eyes, not from the insult, but from the destruction of the moment. My parents were mortified, trying to pull Ronnie away, but she was like a viper, coiled and striking. Julian simply watched her, his expression unreadable, but his eyes held a specific, cold fire that I knew meant he was done holding back. Ronnie, I whispered, shaking. Get out. No. I'm saving you. I won't let you marry a man who can't even afford a decent apartment in a decent city, let alone the kind of life a Hayes deserves. You are marrying a pauper who will drain you dry. He's pathetic. The word hung in the air, pathetic. Julian, who had remained silent and still, finally moved. He reached out and gently took my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. He looked at Veronica, and a smile, slow, deliberate, and utterly lethal, spread across his face. It wasn't the kind smile of a high school teacher. It was the ruthless, chilling smile of a man who owned the world. Ronnie, Julian said, his voice quiet, calm, and carrying an unnerving authority that silenced her mid-breath. You have called my life pathetic, my work inadequate, and me a financial fraud. But I think you're confusing me with my job title. He turned his body slightly, addressing the room, his voice gaining volume and resonance. I am Julian Vance. I am a history teacher and I love my job. He paused, letting the statement stand on its own, then delivered the blow with the precision of a master surgeon. I am also Julian Vance, the chairman of the board, chief executive officer, and majority shareholder of Vance Media Group. The sound in the arboretum died completely. The only noise was the gentle splashing of the fountain. Ronnie froze, her mouth agape, her purple dress suddenly seeming ridiculous. Richard, in the second row, let out a noise that was halfway between a cough and a choking gasp. Vance Media Group. It was the name that defined their professional lives. VMG, Julian continued, speaking directly to Ronnie, owns 70% of the media properties in the country. We own the buildings Richard sells ads for. We own the satellite networks your charity galas beg for sponsorships from. And for the last 5 years, My family required me to live under a strict vow of anonymity and modesty. A test, Ronnie, to see if I could find someone who valued me. The person, not the balance sheet. He tightened his grip on my hand. I found that person. And then, Ronnie, you spent 6 months confirming why that test was necessary. You didn't care about my sister's happiness. You only cared about the size of the check I could write. You judged my integrity by the car I drove. Ronnie's eyes darted frantically to Richard, who was now sweating profusely, his expensive suit suddenly looking cheap. Richard, realizing the full, terrifying weight of the man standing at the altar, tried to vanish into the crowd. Julian watched Richard's panicked face and continued, his gaze returning to Ronnie. Your husband, Richard Sterling, is a VP at Horizon Publishing, one of our subsidiaries. He has repeatedly used company funds for unauthorized personal travel, misclassified entertainment expenses, and I believe, has funneled clients toward his own side venture. My corporate security team has been monitoring his activities for the last 4 months. Activities which, Richard, were flagged by the accounting department directly reporting to the CEO. Julian looked directly at Richard. Richard Sterling, effective immediately, you are terminated from your position at Horizon Publishing. Security has already been notified to collect your company assets and change your access codes. Your family health insurance is terminated as of 5 p.m. today. Richard collapsed back into his chair, a defeated wreck, his hand trembling as he fumbled for his phone, which immediately buzzed, no doubt the email confirming his firing. Ronnie shrieked, this time in real, unadulterated fear. You can't. You're just a teacher. Richard, say something. Julian didn't even look at Richard again. His focus was entirely on Ronnie, the woman who had spent a lifetime trying to belittle me. And you, Ronnie, Julian said, his voice soft, almost sympathetic, yet colder than Arctic ice. You seem to believe that everything I touch is pathetic. Since your husband's income supported your entire elite lifestyle, the Greenwich house, the Bentley lease, the charity board dues, you are about to discover the true definition of a financial drain. My first official act as the newly re-engaged CEO of VMG will be the acquisition and subsequent dissolution of 3 major media-based charity committees in Greenwich, the very ones where you just secured the chairmanship. He leaned in, his final words a chilling whisper. Your entire social circle, the one you used to exclude my wife, is about to lose its funding, its visibility, and its power. And they will know exactly who signed the papers. They will know that your ambition, built on judgment and cruelty, has destroyed everything you value. Now kindly leave my wedding. I have vows to complete. The silence was broken by the quiet, but insistent tapping of the security guard's shoes as he approached Richard and Veronica. The guard, a former VMG security chief who had been disguised as a caterer, efficiently escorted the paralyzed couple away. Ronnie, reduced to a whimpering, horrified mess, didn't fight. Her entire identity had been publicly evaporated by the man she had called pathetic. Julian turned back to me, his fierce expression melting instantly back into the gentle, loving face of my husband-to-be. Sarah, he said, his eyes filled with emotion, ignoring the stunned guests. I apologize. That was the most unteacherly thing I have ever done. I reached up and gently touched his cheek, my heart overflowing not with revenge, but with profound love for the man who would tear down an empire to defend my honor. I think, I whispered back, that was the most romantic thing I have ever witnessed. Now let's finish this, Mr. Vance. The rest of the ceremony was flawless. The vows were heartfelt and true. The guests, now completely stunned into silence, looked at Julian with a mixture of awe and terror. They realized they had just watched a billionaire execute a corporate takeover and a public divorce, all before the main course. At the reception, which was now buzzing with frantic, whispered phone calls and nervous glances, Julian and I danced our first dance. Later, Julian sat me down. Sarah, I knew I had to reveal the truth before the honeymoon, he confessed, holding my hand tightly. I told my family I would only marry a woman who loved Julian, the history teacher. You were the only one who didn't even ask about my background. You didn't care about the car, the house, or the ring. But when Ronnie attacked you, when she tried to humiliate you for the very modesty I cultivated, I realized I couldn't let her poison our day. She chose a public venue for her cruelty, so I chose a public venue for my defense. The financial records she used? I asked. Julian chuckled, a low, rich sound. Completely fabricated, but based on the small teacher's salary account I was required to maintain for the test. We were ready for her. We even planted the seeds for the audit into Richard's accounts last month, knowing she would push him to do something desperate for cash or status. Her own hubris set the trap. I looked at the simple gold signet ring on my finger. What about this ring? I love it. It's the actual Vance family crest, Julian explained, turning it over to show a tiny, almost invisible engraving on the inside band. It's pure platinum, and the gold is sourced from a very specific mine in South Africa. The simple look is what makes it rare. It's worth more than the biggest diamond Richard ever bought Ronnie, but only those who appreciate hidden value would know that. I kissed him, the relief washing over me. The venom was gone. The sister who had defined my life by her judgment was now defined by her downfall. I married the man I loved, a man of immense character and even more immense power. And my quiet, pathetic wedding turned out to be the most powerful event of the social season. A story that would circulate in Greenwich circles for years. The day the poor teacher became the judge, jury, and executioner of the Sterling family's entire life.